Hi, welcome back to the Let's Build a Sketch app. Way to go following your curiosity and building your Java skills bit by bit. I'm Brian Meermans, an instructor at the online tech school Bloom Tech, and today we're going to make a huge step in our program of creating a drawing pen by introducing the concept of variables. Variables allow software to name pieces of data and reuse or update those values. We'll use this to keep track of where the mouse used to be so we can draw a connection from its previous location to its current location. Think about a connect the dots. By doing so, we'll have a drawing pen that actually works. Let's go ahead and get started.
Welcome to day 3. Goal, make the drawing pen actually a drawing pen. Right now, we're working with a starburst where we're connecting the center of the screen to the location of the mouse. Our goal today is to find a way to make the mouse current location connected to the previous location. Think of it as a dot-to-dot connector that we can do many different dots. And we're connecting each dot to the next one. And ultimately, we'll get our nice picture. Here is a demonstration of our program running at the end of the day. So if you looked closely in here, you'll see there's lots of little mini colored lines. Each line connects the last location of the mouse to the current location of the mouse. Now, when we're looking at the mouse to do that, there is no built-in capability. So if I actually pull up the mouse info tab and I look at it, we're going to find out that each mouse info has a get X and get Y, which is the current location of the mouse. Mice don't know their last location. So we, as programmers, are going to learn how do we store that into a value so we can look it up and say, oh, that was the last location. We have to do that by introducing variables. So let's take a look at what a variable is and how they work in Java. So I'm just going to switch over to this notes.txt I made. You do not need to type this. You're just going to watch for a minute. I just want to walk you through what it means to be a variable in Java. In Java, variables are created by saying multiple different steps. You have to say what type of variable it's going to be. And what that means is in Java, it's a statically typed language. And that means every variable in Java needs to know what kind of information it's going to store. Is it going to store a number? Is it going to be storing a word? Is it going to be storing some kind of specific number? Is it storing a mouse? What is it storing? So to identify what type of variable. Not every language does this. So if you've played with any other languages, some of them say, you just say the variable name and you've got one. So you say a type of variable and then you give it a name. So you then do a name of variable. And so that will say, I'd like to have some type of data to be stored, and this is the name I'm going to call it. Let me give you a couple examples of that. One type of variable in Java is int. You've seen it a few times. That one means whole numbers, positive, negative, integers. Now, there are limits to how big those numbers can get, but that lets you store an integer. So here I want an integer that represents the number of books read. That might be a variable that I'm creating that represents the number of books I read, and maybe my library's keeping track of it. I'll get some nice bonus points if I read enough during the summer, whatever it is. That would be a variable that I'm creating. Maybe I want another variable that represents the name of a particular book I read. That would not make sense to go into an integer because integers are numbers. So instead, I'd use a different variable type, maybe one called string. Now, there's many different variable types in Java, and there's no way I'm going to sit here and walk through all of them and make you make sense out of it right away, but I'll show you a few of them. String, maybe I would call like last book read, or maybe I say the title of last book read. Notice the way I'm typing my variable name. So the name of the variable follows a lowercase to start and uppercase of every new word. That is what's called camelback notation. So if you'd like to look up camelback notation and see more about it, please feel free to do so. The data types are going to be different. So this is int, this one is string, and the uppercase does matter, but let's ignore that for the moment. So we're going to leave that alone. Let's say we want to keep track of a decimal. So any kind of decimal. Let's say we want to keep track of the number of digits of pi you happen to memorize, which might be just 3.14. I would say a double. Double is the data type that Java uses to represent a decimal. It's a weird name, but it has a purpose. We might say a number, we'll just call it pi. Literally just called pi. We don't have multiple words inside of it. If you knew the values of each one of these, you could then say, I set it equal to a particular value. So maybe the number of books read is, I don't know, maybe you've read 5 books this year and put a semicolon to say you're into that line of code. Maybe the title of the last book you read, this one's a string, it's words and phrases. And the way to do this is we put in quotes in Java and we say what title was. So maybe the last book you read was To Kill a Mockingbird. And pi, maybe the values of pi is 3.14. That's it. That's how you make variables in Java. Now, sometimes we don't know the value. So maybe we make a value pi and we put a semicolon and say, I'm just going to name a value for the computer to keep track of, but I'll set its value later. We might be using that in our program today. One last part. There are different locations variables can be placed, and I'm not going to go into the details right now, but when our in an actual program here, These are three variables you can create it, and they have some extra words on them. Private and final. We're going to ignore the word final for the moment, but we're going to look at the word private. It just means that only the sketchpad and none of the other files, none of our mains or our buttons or our colors have access to it. So when we're making variables up here, we usually say that they're private and no one else has direct access to them. We can also make variables anywhere in our code. So we could decide to make variables in here or in here, and those don't normally have anything like private. They look just like you saw over here. You'll learn more about that the further you go into Java. But for the moment, we're going to make a couple of variables right about here. We're going to add the word private on them to say that they exist only for the sketchpad. All right, so that was notes. Now let's actually do it. Our goal now is to think, where was the mouse last? And to do that, we need to keep track of two variables that represent where was the last time we saw the mouse. Y2, we need one for the x coordinate and one for the y coordinate. So we're going to go in here and right between these comments, these are called comments. Right between these comments, we're going to add in two variables. One can be a private. What kind of variable do we want to do for the x location the mouse used to be at? Well, it's going to be a number and it's not going to be a decimal. So we're going to do in private integer. Then we got to give it a name. Now, how you name your variables is completely up to you. So maybe you say last x. That's not super descriptive to me. So maybe I say last mouse x. That's a little bit more descriptive. Maybe you say previous mouse x. It's up to you, your choice on what it's called. And if you look at the tutorial, let's go ahead and see what it was called. So when we are declaring our variables, they called it last mouse x and last mouse y. So let's go ahead and do that same thing. Last mouse x, semicolon to say we're done with it, and private int last mouse y. Why am I not giving a value? Well, because I don't know where the last mouse x location was. This is going to be depending on where the mouse was previously, so I don't know its current value. But I've now declared a variable that represents, hey, this is the location the mouse is right now. Okay. Well, this is useless. It doesn't do anything at the moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how do we update those values so that every time the mouse moves, we'll update our values. Think of this as we've just drawn a line. We haven't done it yet. But the next time we draw a line, we want to use it from the previous location the mouse was. And so we're going to go down here and we're going to say, hey, if you want to update a value, you literally just type in the variable name that you want to update. So we see last mouse x. What do I want it to become? Well, this is going to be at the end of our update method. So we're going to have drawn our line already. We're basically saying, let's prep the next time we draw. So the next time we draw, we want our mouse location to be updated to where it used to be. Think that through a little bit. We want our mouse location to be where it used to be. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, make the last mouse x equal to the mouse info.getX. Now that's going to be at the very end of one update cycle. And so the next update cycle, that means that that value actually be the previous mouse location. We'll do the same thing here with the mouse y value. So I'm doing an update to say, hey, update that value to a new location. We have variables now keeping track of where the mouse used to be. Since we're updating it right at the end of the previous update, the next time we do an update, these values will be the mouse used to be. Well, how do we draw our lines correctly? Think about this line of code right now. What would need to be updated so that we draw our location from where we are now to where we used to be? Take a moment, see if you can actually think about that yourself. What I'm seeing is we're drawing a line from our mouse's current location to the middle of the screen. Well, we don't want to draw to the middle of the screen. We want to draw to where it used to be. What we're going to do is we're going to update those two values. We're going to delete those. We're going to say, I want to update where the mouse is previously. So I want two numbers here that represent where the mouse used to be. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to be using the variables that we've created. This variable up here keeps track of where it used to be. We're updating it every time we use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, update it to being the last mouse x. That's where I want to draw my coordinate from, my last mouse y. Now my code says draw from where the mouse is at the moment to where we thought it was. And after drawing it, I'll update those so that next time I draw, those are new values. Let's see what our result is. Okay, let's see what happens. So go to the output tab and move my mouse around and look at that. I have a drawing mouse. Now, if you move too fast, it's going to be kind of really, really quick at what it's going. We're not running on our local computer, we're running on Replit servers, and they are doing a lot of chugging in the background. But if we're working on a local computer, this would be super smooth. So if you move really slow, you can get some nice curves. What we don't have the ability to stay and draw within the lines. We don't have the ability to work only when the mouse button is down, and that's going to add soon. but you've just seen the ability to create a variable, to update the variable using the equal sign, and then to use the variable by plugging it into places we need the values. It's a lot of knowledge early on. Fantastic.
Can you see how your Sketch app is shaping up? Every day you're adding more functionality to the app, and you're learning every step of the way. That's the approach we take to learning at BloomTech. There's no homework for homework's sake. Everything we teach is tied to real-world skills you'll need to solve real-world problems. Our curriculum is 100% focused on getting our learners jobs after they graduate, as well as making sure our learners have practical uses of every concept they learn. You can see what I mean at bloomtech.com/Java. Are you feeling more confident now? Let's keep that momentum going. Meet me in day 4 of Let's Make a Sketch App.